fell in love with Bruce when he was one way, and now frontotemporal lobe dementia, which steals the front part of your brain, but he's still relatively physically healthy.
Yeah. I mean, he is physically healthy. It's just his brain that is failing him.
Emma Heming Willis is a mother, stepmother, wife, advocate, and the co-founder of Make Time Wellness.
After her husband, Bruce Willis's dementia diagnosis, she became a passionate voice for care partners and families navigating neurodegenerative disease.
In her first book, she shares her caregiving story.
Alzheimer's, any type of neurodegenerative disease is terrible. But I had always heard that FTD was like the worst of the worst. And walking in that day, that was not what I thought that I would hear. But I did. It was like I was free falling. I remember like buzzing in my ear. And I remember leaving that office with nothing, no hope, no roadmap, just to check back in a couple of months. Like, that's it. We're just leaving.
So what advice would you give someone who just received a similar life-changing diagnosis?
You know, for me, it was about
Every day, you are making your brain better, or you are making it worse. Stay with us to learn how you can change your brain for the better every day. This podcast is brought to you by the Change Your Brain Foundation, dedicated to ending the concept of mental illness by creating a revolution in brain health. Go to changeyourbrain.org to learn how you can support our mission. We are so excited today for this podcast. It's going to be very important. With us is our friend, Emma Heming Willis, who's a mother, stepmother, wife, advocate, co-founder of Make Time Wellness, a brand devoted to women's brain health. After her husband, Bruce Willis, was diagnosed with frontotemporal lobe dementia, she became a passionate voice for care partners and families navigating neurodegenerative disease. Through her storytelling and advocacy, Emma hopes to help others feel less alone on the caregiving journey. This is her first book. The name of her book, to be released September 9th, The Unexpected Journey, Finding Strength, Hope, and Yourself on the Caregiving Path. Emma was on our podcast before.
Yes, it was.
It's just so great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And it's nice to meet you, Tana.
Absolutely. You too.
I've been following your journey as well with your mother. And I'm so
you.
sorry.
Yeah.
And your grief.
Grief is so hard.
It's so hard.
And a book on caregiving is so important. As a nurse, I that's one of the things I think I saw that was the hardest, was caregivers and families just struggle so much when something tragic happens in a family. It affects everybody.
Yeah. I mean, that diagnosis even of dementia is really a family disease.
It really is.
Yeah, no question about that. And, you know, when Tana's mom got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, I mean, it came out at stage 4 lung cancer, which was just shocking. And then she died 6 weeks later. The grief was awful. But with dementia, the grief doesn't stop. I mean, it really doesn't stop when you lose your mom. But here, you know, you fell in love with Bruce when he was one way, and now frontotemporal lobe dementia, which steals the front part of your brain. But he's still relatively physically healthy.
Yeah. I mean, he is physically healthy. It's just his brain that is failing him. Yeah. I mean, the grief is, you know, it's that idea of like that ambiguous loss. He is physically here, but mentally not. And, you know, I think when it comes to this kind of grief, I've been able to settle into it. You know, I think for you, Tana, it was something that just happened. Everything happened so quickly. And I've had time to be able to feel the grief, be in the grief, grow with the grief. But the beautiful thing is that he is still here and we have time.
So you feel like you really started the grieving process, like even just going through the process now while he's still with you, while he's still going through this, you're sort of grieving what could have been now. And I think there's a lot to be said for being able to start that grieving process. I don't think it's ever going to be easy. I think one of the things I said when I was going through my own grief, because all grief is different, it's a relationship. And you're either going to have a good relationship with grief or you're going to have a bad relationship with grief. But you're going to have a relationship with grief.
Everyone is going to have a relationship
Absolutely.
with grief.
And I learned that. And I don't think I saw it that way before.
No, and I don't think I did either until you're just sort of all of a sudden swept up in it. And what are you going to do? Fight it? I mean, there's been so many things that I think I have fought during this disease where at some point you just have to like put your hands up and not give in, but, decide to accept what is.
Does he still do certain things or have certain habits that catch you off guard and remind you of when you first met him? And
100%, there'll be times with that twinkle and the smirk and the laugh. And, it brings me back where all of a sudden we're back. And as quickly as it comes, it goes as well. So it's hard. It is not an easy diagnosis, but I have been able to find my community, and I've been able to surround myself with people who understand what this looks like. That has been so key for me, is to really be able to find others that understand the process and the grief. And
how did you do that?
Well, I mean, in the beginning, I was very isolated. And I think I hear this a lot from caregivers. It's so easy to want to isolate. And that's what I did for so long, because I was so nervous about things. If I talked about it to anyone, I was nervous about anything getting out.
Well, you're so public. And I think for people who live in the limelight and are like so public, it's tricky.
So yes, very tricky. So I wanted to make sure that, I didn't know what it was, what it could be. I never, in my wildest dreams, thought it was some type of young onset dementia. I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't. So over time, I was able to connect with other people. And I did that once Bruce was diagnosed with FTD. For me, it was connecting with the AFTD, which is the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration. They were able to connect me with another family in a similar scenario where her husband was diagnosed when he was 37, and they had a very young child. Like Bruce and I, we have 2 young daughters, and that was like my first time with meeting someone, being able to talk through just what was happening, and just to see how she was doing it, how she was navigating it. So that was how I started to find my community. And from there, I started to get more involved in advocacy. And because of that, I was able to meet more people. And that has been a lifeline for me. Being able to connect with other people has been a lifeline. It's so easy for me to want to isolate and not be forthcoming. But I think that that almost killed me.
It's, the human state is just so fragile and so frail. And I think as much as you're in the public eye, and that's got to be so painful to or to even know what you should say or what you shouldn't say. And, it's very uncomfortable. I can only imagine how helpful it's been to so many people who actually see you going through it once you were finally able to do that. It's probably just been very helpful to so many women that your caregivers that you're trying to be an example for. But I can't imagine before you were able to do that, the fear you must have felt before you knew what it was.
Oh, it was pure fear. I was in such fear. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know if I could go to his doctor. I didn't know if you were allowed to do that. And you just start figuring things out as you go, one day at a time. But yeah, I mean, I, again, now have a really beautiful community. And it's been so, that's been really, again, like just a lifeline for me to connect with others.
So when did you first see symptoms, and what were they that caused you to go, something's wrong?
For me, it's very gray. It's very gray of when Bruce's disease stepped in and where he started to exit. I don't really know. And I hear that from a lot of caregivers, that it's so hard for them to really understand when those symptoms started coming in. So for Bruce, he was diagnosed with primary progressive aphasia, PPA, which is a subtype of FTD. So for him, it's language, communication. So what I had noticed was like his stutter that he used to have as a child into his teens. And when he went into college, had a severe stutter. And I started noticing it, but it came back at times. But he's always kind of managed his stutter. But I really started noticing that started coming back again. So, those were the early symptoms. There's different subtypes of FTD. You have PPA, you have the behavioral variant. There's also a subtype that can affect movement. So for Bruce, it was communication.
I assume he was fairly frightened too when this first started, or was he not quite as aware of it as you were?
Not quite as aware.
Okay.
Thank God. I'm really happy that he wasn't. I think that would have hurt me more to know that he was upset and scared. It was just me. Just me.
So when you think of frontal temporal lobe dementia, it means frontal lobes are deteriorating for a variety of reasons, and the temporal lobes. And so expressive language is left for most people, if they're right-handed, left frontal lobe. It's an area called Broca's area. And when it starts to deteriorate, you can't get words out like you normally would get words out. And that can happen from a head injury or stroke or FTD. The behavioral variant is more globally their frontal lobes. I always say the front part of our brain is our brake. It stops us from saying things we shouldn't say or doing things we shouldn't do. And when it deteriorates, all of a sudden, spouses in particular are furious at their partner because it's like, well, why didn't you stop from saying that or doing that?
Yeah. I've heard with the behavioral variant, people become very inappropriate. But it's, as a spouse, you don't know what's happening. You think it's a choice that they are making, but in actuality, it's not. It's their brain deteriorating. And this disease gets misdiagnosed all the time as bipolar, depression, but it rarely comes back as FTD.
You described the moment of his diagnosis feeling like the ground disappeared under you. So what advice would you give someone who just received a similar life-changing diagnosis?
Yeah, I think when you're walking into that office, that's the day that you're receiving a diagnosis, and you can see already that there is something different that is happening to your person. So for me, I just remember hearing it, and I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. That FTD was, Alzheimer's, any type of neurodegenerative disease is terrible. But I had always heard that FTD was like the worst of the worst. And walking in that day, that was not what I thought that I would hear. But I did. And I just remember it was like the carpet had been pulled from underneath me. It was like I was free falling. I remember like buzzing in my ear. And I remember leaving that office with nothing, no hope, no roadmap, just to check back in a couple of months. And I was like, what? Like, that's it. We're just leaving. So
it was a neurologist that gave him that diagnosis?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there was no plan
Zero.
to slow it down.
How do you slow down a progressive disease? I mean, that's the thing. There is no treatment. There's obviously no cure, which is, one of the reasons why I've been wanting to be such an advocate, to be able to talk about this disease, because I would like to have another family when they go in there one day to be able to say, that neurologist will say, here's the FTD diagnosis, but here is a treatment. Here is something that we can do. But there really is not anything. You can manage the symptoms, but there is no treatment to slow it down.
Push on that a bit, because you can clearly accelerate it, right? You can feed him bad food and that'll make it go faster, which means if you feed him really great, it'll make it go slower, because it's still a brain that changes every day. You can sleep deprive him and it'll go faster.
Sure.
I have this acronym, I don't know if we talked about it
Ants?
before, called Bright Minds.
Oh, no. I thought it was the ants.
That, every day we're making things better or worse, including dementia. And when I've worked in elder care facilities, it's like, you're really going to let them choose what they eat? Because what they choose are all the things that accelerate trouble.
Sure.
Right?
I mean, listen, prevention is better than cure, but not a lot of people know how to care for their brains. A
lot of people know how to care for their brains.
Yeah.
Most people don't think about it until
you get a diagnosis.
There's big trouble.
Yeah.
How did you shift mentally from separating Bruce from his disease?
I think receiving that diagnosis was a blessing and a curse. But I was at least I knew what it was. And at least I knew that what was happening to him was no fault of his own. It was because his brain was being dismantled. And being able to see that, and understanding, I was able to meet him with so much more compassion and patience and understanding. I've heard from other care partners where they don't have a diagnosis yet. It's a type of dementia. But okay, but what is it? I think that is what I always am so confused about. That why is it that it's a dementia, but why is it so hard sometimes for a neurologist to be able to put a label on it? Because I think that is so helpful for a caregiver, so that they know, what type of dementia it is and how they can support their loved one. I think it's so important to be able to land on a diagnosis so that you know how to meet them where they are at. I mean, can you tell me why it's so hard to get to a diagnosis for dementia?
Well, we image people. And the study I do, SPAC, there's a pattern for Alzheimer's disease. There's a pattern for frontotemporal lobe dementia. There's a pattern for vascular dementia. And so if you're not doing functional imaging, it's hard. And so many people get a diagnosis of dementia and no one's really ever functionally imaged their brain. So I don't find it hard to give people a diagnosis. But for me, I'm always like, we can make it better. What do we do to make it better?
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't, right? But at least you're going after all the risk factors.
You talked a lot about, we talk a lot about pain to purpose. Clearly that's what you're doing. And you talk a lot about your community. But I'm just curious, what do you do on a personal level? Do you have a mantra? Do you have a prayer? What is it that you do that has helped you somehow ground yourself or find peace in this process?
Again, I go back to community because that's so important, because I was doing the complete opposite of that, of isolating. It's been so important for me to find others, to be able to talk. I found a therapist. That was also really important. For me, it was just doing the opposite of what I was doing before. Don't isolate, talk, be open about what's happening, be able to share. Don't always put walls and boundaries and things up. It's really important to talk about what it is that I am going through. But again, like when we had gotten that diagnosis, I wasn't going to allow it to take our whole family out. It was a choice that I made where, this is a terrible thing that is happening, but I won't, we have 2 young children, and I'm not going to make this whole thing terrible. I'm going to find a way to reframe this
Well, that's amazing.
You have grief and sadness, and I can have a full life and be able to make a beautiful life for our children and give Bruce quality of life. I needed to find that balance. And because I'm choosing to, as Bruce would say, live it up as well as I can, it doesn't take away from the love or the care that we give to Bruce.
We often say kids don't do what you tell them to do. They do what you do, right? They don't do what you say, they do what you do.
Yeah.
And you're just doing that is such a great example in teaching your girls how to, not just how to love, but how to rally, like how to be an example of support and love and not falling apart, because we all hit crisis.
Bruce would not want our children to be clouded by his FTD diagnosis. Not at all. He would want us to be able to live, to get out there and make sure that they are living their best, fullest life. And that is what I am trying to do for them, to honor him.
So how do you manage that with caring for him, caring for the kids, and then caring for yourself? One of the things you talk about in the book is putting your oxygen mask on first.
Yeah, I needed to do that. I rallied support. I think what people don't understand is that caring for someone with dementia actually takes a team of people.
Oh, yeah.
And so many people have to do this alone. And we are fortunate and in a position where we can have formal caregiving. I wouldn't be able to be here today talking with you guys if I didn't.
Yeah.
I've been on the other side of that where I didn't have support because I didn't know I was allowed to ask for it. I really thought
you almost feel guilty.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I felt very guilty. Like I wasn't being the best wife that I could be. Not doing my part. I'm supposed to, as society, it's like, which was drilled into my head. It's like, I'm the one and only me and no one else. So I really thought that this is only going to be me. I can't ask for support. But, that is not.
So this is a really important point because I remember when my mom was sick and I was a nurse and I'm married to a doctor. We moved her into my house. And I just think so many people, who are watching this that are going through struggles like this, caregiving is hard. And she was, stage 4 lung cancer, and she was very acute. She was very sick. And I'm like, I'm a nurse. I can handle this. And I moved her into my house. And it took, 3 days before I was like, I don't even know. Like, how do people do this? We have resources, we have knowledge, we have medical skill. And I was completely drowning and overwhelmed. And you walked in and you're like, we're going to hire someone. And I'm like, what do people do who can't, we just were completely overwhelmed. Even with help, I was overwhelmed. So I think it's a really important point to anybody listening is that it's real. I mean, you really have to rally and you have to get anyone you can to help, any family member, and you can't feel guilty for asking for help.
Yeah. It's really important to rally your family and friends. And one of the things that, all the experts and specialists that I interviewed for this book, one of the things that they said was that people don't ask for help soon enough.
No.
That it's never too early to start asking for help, to really start putting together your team of family and friends to come together. And that, when people ask like, oh, is there anything that I can do?
Yes.
Say yes. You have to say yes. You have to have a list.
That's so hard for us as good girls.
Of course, but what you do is that you, as a caregiver, you make a list. It takes a little bit of work, but it's important to have that list. Like think about all the things that you do in a day or in a week or in that month. getting your car washed, getting groceries,
drive my kids somewhere,
take my kids to the movies. If you're going through the college process, can you help them with the college essay? Whatever it is, just have a list so that when someone says, is there anything that I can do to help? You don't just say, oh no, it's okay. I'm okay. That's what I did for so long. It doesn't work. It really doesn't work. It's important to have that list and say, actually, yes. Is there and
then you'll see who is serious and who isn't.
That's right.
And it's just so important because everybody will say it, but not everybody will do it.
That's right.
And then you'll find your tribe. And that's where you focus your energy.
Mm-hmm.
But when the masks come down, you have to put yours on first. And too often people are like caring for everybody else and then they burned out. Did you know 15% of caregivers have dementia themselves?
I did know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a high percentage of caregivers that pass before their loved ones.
Because of the chronic stress, which is just so bad for your immune system.
Chronic stress, and then also just not making your own medical appointments.
Oh, it was 6 weeks, and I felt like I went through a war. And I'm sure you've had your times of feeling like you went through, it's like a war zone. Yeah. And I remember telling myself it's okay because eventually I'll take care of myself again. At the end of that 6 weeks, do you remember I had my blood drawn? I'm like, I know I'm not healthy. I was such a mess.
In 6 weeks.
Within 6 weeks,
sure.
I was a disaster. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine? Well, you can. People who are going through this chronically.
Yeah.
It's just so hard, and you have to have a plan and you have to have some structure that you put into place because you're going to get sick. And like you said, if you don't put your oxygen mask on first,
how are you going to be able to take care of anyone else? It doesn't make any sense.
Want better focus, energy, and sleep? Take care of your brain with BrainMD. Get 20% off at BrainMD with code podcast20. You mentioned in the book feeling triggered by unsolicited advice and judgment from others. How do you now set healthy boundaries around this caregiving journey?
Yeah, I think caregivers, everyone is so opinionated. Everyone has an opinion of what you should be doing, but they don't have the experience to back it up. If they are not participating in the day-to-day care, they do not have a say. That is what I really, truly believe. But what you can say is actually what would be really helpful is, here's my list. Here's my list of things that you can do to help. That would be very helpful and supportive to me. It's just about flipping the script, setting those boundaries.
Were there any really unexpected emotions that you ended up feeling through this? That just surprised you?
Oh yeah. Anger, resentment. Of course there's the sadness and the grief. I didn't realize that I would have just a whole array of emotions. And I felt like such a bad person because I had anger and resentment in me.
I relate to that.
But that's why it was so important for me to be able to talk these feelings out. And the therapist that I was working with had worked with someone else in a similar scenario. And, she reassured me that what you're feeling, Emma, is not unique.
Mm-mm.
You are not a bad person because you are having these feelings and emotions. You are human. This is a human experience that you are having. So I just thought that was really important to talk about that in the book as well. That, you will have an array of emotions, but what's important is how you process them. It's important that you get it out and that you talk about it.
And sooner than later.
And that's why it's important to find your community so that, when you do talk about anger and resentment, and if you're talking to someone who doesn't understand what you're going through, they will think ooh, that's weird.
Well, and you pointed something out, because when you feel resentment and anger about someone who's sick or going through a really, difficult medical diagnosis, you feel guilty. So you have to work on that as well, because it's very confusing. It's a very confusing time.
Yeah. And, again, that's why getting to a diagnosis is so important, and understanding that, because I'm not mad at Bruce. Right. I'm not angry at him. I'm really pissed off at his disease. And that's how I've learned to separate him from the disease. And being able to label it and understand that, it's just, I am angry and resentful at his disease, not at Bruce. This is no fault of his own. But I just think that's important for that. Caregivers know that they will have all of these feelings, good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And some people are going to have resentment and anger towards the person if they had unresolved issues. And that's okay. It's just work through them sooner than later, because that guilt can just eat you.
What I tell my children, it's better out than in.
Yep.
It's so important just to process, get it out. Don't allow it to stay inside, which is what I did. And it just festers. Mm-hmm. And that is no good for anyone. So if you can't get a therapist, find someone that you can speak to that will not be met with judgment or criticism. And, you can find that by support group. Or, when you go to your neurologist's office, you can ask them, is there another family that you think that I can connect with, that they would be willing to connect with me? There are ways to find people to talk to who understand what you're going through, who will not judge you for having the feelings that you have.
And you have found, is it the Association for Frontotemporal Lobe Dementia helpful?
Yeah, the AFTD, the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration. They have been a lifeline for me. I think it's important that when you get a specific diagnosis, contact that association, that organization, so that you can get embedded into what those support groups are. There's a hotline usually. There is a whole community that you can embed yourself in that will really be supportive and helpful to you. And that has been the AFTD for me.
Well, and that's really a spiritual component to this, turning pain into purpose. Mm-hmm. And you always say pain shared is pain divided.
Oh, I love that. I remember you saying that.
Yeah. So finding the right experts were really helpful for you. For someone just starting out, what are the most important traits finding an expert?
For me, it was about compassion, kindness. I really wanted to, that's where I sort of find my comfort is, finding people that understand, not the neurologist that diagnosed us. That was not the vibe at all. So I was able to sort of put this team around us. It was like one door opened up another door. I wasn't sure exactly who I needed, what I needed, but I knew I needed to support Bruce. I needed to support our children. I needed to support myself. And what I knew early on was that I wanted to connect with a dementia care specialist. And I did a Google search and came across a woman named Teepa Snow, who is an expert in my book. And she really taught me about just fine-tuning my skills. And she's so knowledgeable and just so loving and compassionate. And I was able to help her. Teepa was able to help me, again, just sharpen these caregiving tools. And then from speaking with her, she opened the door to someone else. And that was kind of how I was able to assemble this team and be able to bring them into this book, because not everyone has the time, the energy, the resources to be able to assemble this kind of team. And I knew once I had all of this information, that is how the unexpected journey was born. I was able to compile it all into a book to be able to share it with someone else, so that when they do get a diagnosis, my hope is that the neurologist says, here's the unexpected journey. There actually is a roadmap. There actually is things that you can do to support yourself on this journey.
So I have a question. Hopefully both of you can put input into this. I've seen, as a nurse who worked with kids with CP, and so families they're pretty worn out. And other
cerebral palsy.
I was going to say, what is CP? I was like, CP.
Cerebral palsy is my nursing coming out. And other chronic long-term issues where it just really creates a lot of caregiver burnout. But I've seen what's really interesting to me, and in my case where I worked, it really wasn't a matter of having a lot of resources because people didn't have them. But I noticed that some families, they just rose and thrived almost no matter what, like even in terrible circumstances. And others, I would see the caregivers or the parents just deteriorate and just go into this deep, dark black hole, and they couldn't come out of it. And they were just constantly mourning what they lost, as opposed to like figuring out a new way to thrive within that and grow within it. What makes the difference between that post-traumatic stress and that post-traumatic growth within that community, within those really chronic, difficult communities?
I mean, again, like for me, it was like a choice. I made a conscious decision and a choice. I could either choose to do exactly that, go fall into a corner. That's what I want to do most days. I just do. But I don't have the luxury of that. It's important for me. I wasn't going to allow again for it was a choice. It's a choice. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I often think it's, I always talk about brain reserve, and it's the brain and the mindset you bring into an accident that determines how you come out of the accident. And
do you think modeling has much to do with it? Like you're being a great model for your daughters right now.
What do you think in your background gives you the strength to manage this day in and day out?
My mom was a single parent. She was working 3 jobs in order to keep us afloat. So I was modeled strength, resiliency. That is what I know. Grit. And you get in it and you take care of it and you just put your big girl panties on and get on with it. And I think it has a lot to do with what I saw. And I know that, hence why I want to model that for my children.
I love that every day. You're modeling health or you're modeling illness with your behavior. You describe your daughters, Mabel and Evelyn, as a part of the journey too. What have been some key lessons in parenting while caregiving that you wish you knew earlier?
Well, early on, when I didn't know it was okay to ask for support, I didn't know it was okay to ask for help. I didn't know that I should be putting my oxygen mask on first. I mean, you do know that as a parent, but you don't realize that it also applies to caregiving. It's just realizing that I was feeling like I was failing. I wasn't being the best mother I could be, the best caregiver I could be, the best daughter, friend. It was all just unraveling. So again, that's not what Bruce would want. I went back to that. Like, what would he want? He would want me to care for myself so that I can care for our children. And I just was, again, made that choice to just turn it around. And listen, I don't do it perfectly. I am not perfect. There are days that I am, sad, and they see that, but it's okay. It's okay for them to see that. It's just really about having that balance and not having this disease just cloud everything in their lives.
Do you think it's harder being in the public? Well, I know it's harder being in the public eye, but how do you manage that being in the public eye when there's probably just days you want to just ugly cry and not be nice to everybody that you come across and have to be polite and smile because people are watching you? How do you manage that?
I don't really have. I don't know how in the public eye I am. I'm just going into rooms that are very sort of FTD. I'm going into FTD rooms, and just trying to be there in my community. And just, it doesn't matter who, this diagnosis just levels the playing field. It doesn't matter that my husband is Bruce Willis. It's just, I'm able to connect with caregiver to caregiver. I think it's been important for me to also write this book to be able to take back our narrative. You know, there's always something out there. There's always something out there, you know, and I just want to be able to also just set the record straight of what is and what is not.
What do you hope for this book?
I hope it helps another caregiver. I hope that they will feel like they are not alone, that there actually is things that they can do and put into place that will support them, which will only support their person, their loved one. I hope this book gets into the hands of other friends and family members so that they will learn how to show up and support the caregiver in their life. And, you know, just like change this narrative around care. I also think it's really important that we talk about care, understand the kind of care that we would want in the future, because at some point, everyone will need care, or you will need to give care to someone. And I know that sounds really dark and sad, but
it's just the truth.
It is the truth, you know, in one way or another. And I didn't know that early on. I was very blindsided by this whole.
How old were you when Bruce got this diagnosis?
He was diagnosed in 2022. I'm 49 now. So
how long do you suspect there was a problem before you got the diagnosis?
Again, it's hard. It's just hard to.
It happens decades before you get the diagnosis. And when you look back, you can begin to see evidence of it. And we know with Alzheimer's, for example, I diagnosed someone when she was 59. She probably had negative changes in her brain in her 20s. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we should all be on a dementia prevention program. And that's when you and I first met. You go, well, I want to look at my brain and make sure, and you have a beautiful brain.
Oh, okay.
Right. That's what I told
do you think it's still beautiful?
I have to
be careful with the stress, but
I have to look, but it, you know, I mean, high levels of cortisol, stress hormone, are definitely not great for your brain, which is why you have to put your mask on first, like you said, right? But it happens early. And I love our 6 children, but I never want to have to live with any of them. and if that's true, that means every day I need to be on a dementia prevention program. And there are clear things we do that accelerate our risk and things that decelerate our risk. And pain to purpose decelerates your risk, because what it does is it gives you purpose and it connects you to other people. And that helps, right? Isolation. And now, according to the Surgeon General, 58% of the population reports being lonely. And that is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And so not being lonely is just so important. To connect, support groups, church, whatever you can do, that'll be helpful.
Is there anything not in the book that you can think of that you want to share with people? Advice you would give them, or feelings you've had?
Well, I left everything in that book. I really did.
You just left it
I
out
really
there.
just, you know, it was, writing the book was just one of the most healing things. You know, it was so cathartic. It was such a beautiful experience. I mean, it was hard, but I really enjoyed the process of it. The promotion side of it, this side, getting out and talking about it, it's hard. It's heavy. You know, it's heavy. But, you know, journaling, writing, really being able to just share is just, you know, it just unburdens you. That I've enjoyed. I'm so grateful that I've had the opportunity to be able to write this book. And I really do hope that it helps someone else. That is the hope for that book, that it gets in the hands of other caregivers, friends, family, so that they understand that it's important to care for ourselves and that They shouldn't feel guilty about that. There's so much guilt around that. But you can't care for someone properly if you are not caring for yourself.
One of my patients once, I just loved her so much. Her daughter died of bone cancer, and she just went to bed and did all the wrong things. And on the 2-year anniversary of her daughter's death, she was going to kill herself. And she saw me on public television, and she's like, I'm going to get his book. And if it's a bad book, I'm going to kill myself tomorrow.
Oh, Lord.
She told me that story. But she just did what I wanted her to do. And she lost 24 pounds, and she was running, and she stopped drinking. And she said, I want you to tell your patients, never let grief be your excuse to hurt yourself. I love that.
You said
so
something that resonated with me when you said this isn't what Bruce would want. When my mom passed away, I was having a really hard time because I was sort of stuck in that sadness and, the crying, and it was just hard. And then I realized something. One of my biggest fears would be for something to happen to me and my daughter not to thrive or to get stuck in grief. I would never want that. And when I realized that, it was like an aha moment. And I'm like, that was my mom's biggest fear. So why would I make that true for her? And it was somehow that revelation sort of like caused me to start new daily habits. I'm like, it is a habit, and I had to sort of discipline myself. But every day when I would start to go to that place, I'm like, this would be the opposite of what my mother would want. And I just would discipline my mind to go to happy thoughts instead. And it took a while, but it worked.
Yeah. And it's not about like toxic positivity.
No,
right? It's really about just making a conscious choice. And, even if it's just like getting outside and having the sunshine on your face, it's just about these like small little things that we can do.
Right. And you can still feel it. I feel it.
You can still feel
I just
going
don't
to feel
wallow in it.
No.
I force myself to have habits and discipline sort of the way that I would want my daughter to do it.
Yeah. Patty Davis, who is an expert in my book, she talks about, being in anger, sadness, whatever that might be, and allowing it to be there for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Like be in it for 30 minutes, feel all the things, get angry, scream, stomp your feet, do all the things. You have 30 minutes though. And after that, get on with your day, just to sit in that. I can't imagine what that would be like just to sit in that. It's just not healthy. It's not healthy. And if you are not healthy, how are you caring for your person that you want to show up for, that you want to be there for?
I like that so much. Also, end every day with what went well today. Like as a practice. At night, I say a prayer, and then I start at the beginning of my day, and I go hour by hour until I'm asleep, looking for what I liked about the day.
It's easy as caregivers to want to like beat ourselves down. Oh, you weren't patient today, or you did this wrong, or it's just these negative thoughts, negative. But you have to reframe, relook at the day, exactly what you do.
Take them captive, which is one of the verses in the New Testament is take each thought captive. Because, I call them ants, automatic negative thoughts that steal your happiness. And you have to have a little anteater running around your head, just cleaning that stuff up. And one thing that might be helpful, this is so helpful for me, every day I win or I learn. I never fail. I win or I learn. I had a great day or I had lots of lessons. And
yeah.
And with caregivers, they have lots of lessons.
So many lessons.
Right.
And I've grown so much. I can't, I look at it where I think, God, I'm like really proud of myself. I knew nothing about any of this, nothing about dementia prior to becoming a caregiver. And I, have grown and learned so much. And I'm so proud of that.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce would be so proud of that. So I sit in that and, pat myself in the back. And of course, sometimes, yes, I beat myself up. I am human, but I've learned to balance that and to balance those negative thoughts that can be all consuming. Because what is it?
Well, whenever they come, write them down. I find that so helpful. Whenever you feel sad or mad or nervous or out of control, write down what you're thinking. And then just go, is that true? I mean, can I really know? Because when you write them down, you get them out of
Sometimes
your
they just
head.
look absurd as soon as you write them down. I'm just like, oh, that was a really stupid thought.
I know. I had this thought. My wife never listens to me. I wrote that down. My wife never listens to me. And I'm like, well, that's not true. She listens to me all the time. But if you don't question them, you believe them. And then you act as if they're true, and they can just devastate you.
Yeah. Better out than in. Just get them out. However, whatever that looks like, it's so important just to get it out, process it, and not just dwell in those feelings.
So The Unexpected Journey, out September 9th. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
It's
Thank
a huge
you.
accomplishment.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's so much emotion that goes into writing a book, especially a book like this.
I loved it so much, I would write 10 more. I don't know what that subject would be. I'm hoping the next one will be like a fun cookbook. Something fun, something joyous, but one book at a time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So wonderful.
So great to see you again.
Nice to see you guys. Thank you for having me.
Whether you're a police officer, firefighter, EMT, therapist, or other personnel, you have to face high-intensity, stressful situations on a regular basis. In some cases, you have to make split-second, life-or-death decisions. The job can lead to critical incident stress, lack of focus, irritability, difficulty relating to others on the job, lack of motivation, excessive alcohol or drug use, and more. Hi, I'm Dr. Daniel Amen. As a psychiatrist and brain health expert, I've worked with hundreds of first responders, and I've seen that all of these issues are related to brain health problems. Brain dysfunction is the #1 reason why first responders have trouble on the job and in life. To perform at your best, you need to be at your best. This means you need to optimize your brain, because everything you think, do, or feel is based on the physical functioning of your brain. Coaching yourself and your colleagues to better brain health is the key to being more effective. My Change Your Brain, Change Your Life for First Responders course can help you do it. By following the simple yet powerful brain health strategies in this course, you and your team can develop peak performance, better decision-making, greater resilience, more energy, less fatigue, better moods, critical incident stress reduction, healthy skills and coping mechanisms, stronger communication skills in high-risk, emotionally charged situations, and so much more. With a better brain, always comes a better life and a better first responder. The time is now for a brain health revolution, and it starts with you. Sign up now. Thank you so much. You can get Emma's book on Amazon or anywhere great books are sold, The Unexpected Journey. Also, thank you for listening to the podcast or watching it. Subscribe, leave a comment, question, or review. We'll be back.